I'm going to give a few updates about what's going on so that everyone's aware. Um, so I'm still, strolling the last few days, TikTok, YouTube, all of it. And what I'm seeing is honestly wild. With it's understandable, but then it's scary at the same time. People panicking, angry. There's a new rumor floating around that Walmart might be closing on the 1st, and now it's turned into a full blown frenzy. But what's even crazier is the reaction, because this whole situation is exposing something much deeper than a store rumor. It's exposing how dependent we've become on a system that was never meant to sustain us for life. Everywhere I look, I'm seeing grown people, many of them African American, many of them parents, on camera threatening to rob stores, saying stuff like, if I don't get my food stamps, I'm taking matters into my own hands. And now they're even threatening um, to threaten people physically, bodily harm. And that's not empowerment, it's just desperation. And it's fear disguised as anger. And it's heartbreaking because this isn't what our community was built to be. Look, I've been on food stamps before and I stated this previously, and I know what it's like to need help. But help is supposed to be temporary. It's supposed to lift you up, not become your identity. Somewhere along the way, people turned government assistance into a comfort zone, and now that comfort is being shaken. When I was on assistance, I had to learn to cook from scratch. There wasn't a lot of luxury. There wasn't Uber Eats, and I couldn't fill my freezer with pre cooked meals. I had to stretch every dollar. And like I said, that was after I figured how to spend my food stamps properly. But what I'm noticing now is that many people never learned those survival skills. They rely on frozen food, fast food, and snacks. So when benefits slow down, they panic because they don't actually know how to feed themselves. If you can make a pot of beans, rice, and vegetables last a week, you don't grow hungry. But the system has trained people to expect convenience, not sustainability. Even the WIC program, Women, Infants, Children, doesn't allow frozen meals. They give you beans, milk, vegetables, because they want to teach you how to build something healthy, not buy your way through the month. Now, some of us are using food stamps like it's a VIP card. Crabs, lobsters, shrimp boils, steaks, all of it. And then when the 15th comes, that's usually when people start to run low. There's nothing left in the fridge, and that's not poverty. That's poor management. And I know that might sound harsh, but I have to put it out there because I've been there, done that, and it's the truth. You can't complain about the government when you're misusing what the government gives you. That's like crying about an empty tank when you've been joyriding all month. And just a side note, if you have any leftover benefits, according to what I'm hearing, those benefits are not going to roll over into the next month since next month's EBTs are being cut off. So it's being advised that since you do not have any, since the benefits will not run over, it's best to get some shelf sustainable food instead of letting the benefits just kind of go to waste. Right now, 40 million people are affected by these SNAP changes. And yes, there are people in that number who truly need the help: seniors, single parents, people with disabilities. But a large chunk of that number could work, but they just choose not to. And if you've been on food stamps for 5, 10 years and you're not disabled or sick, then this should be your wake up call. This should be your opportunity to make plans to get off of it. The government is not your provider, God is. And He's giving you wisdom even ideas to get off of this system. The government was never meant to raise your children or feed you for life. And now look at what's happening with the TSA workers, which everyone's starting to talk about now because they see the severity of the situation past food. These are full time government employees, people who actually go to work every single day, and even they're not getting paid because of this shutdown. Some of them are lining up at food banks, trying to feed their families. Flights are being delayed, security lines are backed up, people are stuck in airports because the system is breaking under its own weight. So if you're watching this right now thinking, well, I'm safe because I have a job, think again, because this shows that even the working class can be shaken when the system cracks. If you're paying attention, this isn't just politics, this is spiritual. God is letting people see that if you build your life on man's system, you'll crumble when man's system falls. This is a test of dependency. Who do you depend on, the government or God? Because the minute the EBT card doesn't reload or that paycheck doesn't hit, a lot of people lose their peace. But if your faith and discipline are rooted in God, you'll still stand when everything else collapses. And to those posting videos threaten violence, please stop. You're not proving a point, you're broadcasting weakness and the potential of you getting arrested, which you don't need, especially if you have children. You're showing the world that your peace and your stability depend on a man made card. Instead of shouting, I'm going to rob the store, shout, I'm going to learn to grow my food. I'm going to learn to take care of my own issues. I don't need the government. Instead of saying, I'm done, say, I'm about to start. This is the moment to shift from dependence to discipline. I know this is scary for a lot of families. Some of you are wondering how you'll eat next week. But don't panic. Don't let fear make you foolish. Ask God for strategy. He's still Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides. He hasn't changed just because the government paused the program. This is your moment to grow spiritually, mentally, financially. Learn to make bread, learn to budget, learn to build. And if you're listening to this, understand this isn't punishment, it's preparation. God is breaking the dependency so that you can finally step into your destiny. So, whether Walmart closes or not, whether the benefits come back or not, this is bigger than that. This is about learning to stand on your own, trusting God to supply, and preparing your house for the real stability. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about food stamps or shutdowns. This is about who you trust to feed you when the system stops working. Now, one other thing I wanted to add is that I'm hearing a lot of people and seeing a lot of videos again commenting, saying, well, 80% of people on SNAP or food stamps are already working. And that's true. And I get it. I understand that's the reason for that. Some states do require that you have a job before they issue a certain amount of benefits. I understand that some jobs don't pay enough or that the cost of living has gone up so high that even full-time workers are struggling to stretch a paycheck. But here's what I'm noticing as well, and this might sting a little. If you are still coming up short, if you're working but still broke every single month, then you need to start asking yourself some serious questions about how your finances are being handled. And I say this because I've done this to myself. Because when I hear people say my rent is high, and especially here on the West Coast is really high, rent is very high. Groceries are expensive. My paycheck doesn't go far enough. I'm not saying you're lying because I've been there. I always have to budget. But I'm also saying, what are you buying? Now, let's be honest. Rent doesn't suddenly change every month. It's usually the same. So you already know what your base expenses look like. You already know what your income is. So why does it still feel like you're drowning? Are you buying things you don't need? Are you shopping impulsively? Are you chasing name brands instead of being more wise with your finances? Because that's what I had to ask myself before it actually sank in and I actually started to understand about my finances when I couldn't figure out anything. There was a time years ago when it was just me and my daughter, and I had a job and I was making a decent amount of money, but for some reason, I was always scraping by, always counting down to the next paycheck, always stressed. And one day I finally sat down and I looked at my bank account. I think at that time I had a Wells Fargo account. And with Wells Fargo, they have this, I'm not sure if they still have it now, but they have this app where, or a little tab where you can click and it'll show you all your expenses for the month. And when I looked at my expenses for the month, it showed that more than 50% of my income was going toward fast food. And not only fast food, but it was also bank overdraft fees. At that time, it was $25 every time it would go overdrawn. And then I realized, wow, I'm really mismanaging my money. I had been swiping that debit card like it was nothing. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, convenience stores, you name it. And what I found it shocked me. I was spending nearly $500 a month. And that, like I said, just on fast food alone. That wasn't gas. That wasn't taking my car for maintenance. It wasn't rent. That it was just fast food. $500. That wasn't entertainment. It wasn't anything, not even a phone bill. That was me being too tired because I was a full-time job. Sometimes I was working 13 hours a day. I was too tired. I was at points too lazy to cook on the weekend, thinking that because I was working hard, I deserved convenience. But what I didn't realize was that my convenience was bleeding my budget dry. So I made a change. I started cooking from scratch again. I went grocery shopping with a plan instead of impulse. And you know what? The problem disappeared. The whole point of me saying that is this. Sometimes it's not that you don't make enough. It's not that you're not managing what you make. Wise is more, it's, let me rephrase it. It's that you're not managing what you make wisely. And I say that with confidence because I made that mistake. It blows my mind when I hear stories about people struggling, but then I find out someone in the house is making over $100,000 a year. And I'm hearing that more often. If you're making, you know, anyone's making six figures and still coming up short every month, it's not the economy, it's not inflation, it's your spending. And I know that because I've seen this firsthand. I have a family member who makes that exact amount, a little bit over 100,000 a year, and constantly broke and struggling. Constantly talking about how he doesn't have enough money, how bills are piling up, and how it's so hard to get ahead. But I know the truth. He's drowning in debt. He owes the IRS. He's not truthful on his taxes. He makes bad decisions. He's run up his credit cards. He's paying off personal loans. He's cheating on his partner. So he has a side person who he pays some money to. He's constantly buying used cars that break down, then trying to fix them himself instead of just buying a reliable vehicle with a warranty. Every dollar he makes goes right back out the door because he's financing his own bad habits. Then he blames the economy when really the problem is his bad decisions. And I'm saying that out of love and truth. As adults, we have to stop blaming the world for the consequences of our own financial decisions. If your rent hasn't changed, your income hasn't changed, but your spending habits keep you broke, that isn't oppression, that is your mismanagement. We have to stop using the economy as a scapegoat for every bad decision. Because the reality is this: there are people living in the same economy as you, working the same hours in some cases, facing the same inflation, and somehow they're not struggling the same way. That right there should tell you it's not just the system, it's your choices. If you're at a job that hasn't given you a raise in years, if that job doesn't offer benefits, if it's not allowing you to grow, then why are you still there? Nobody is forcing you to stay. You can learn a new skill. You can apply somewhere else. You can even move to a cheaper area if you need to. But what you cannot do is keep blaming the system when the real problem is fear of change. It's not the government holding you back. It's not the economy holding you down. It's you staying comfortable in a struggle that you could walk out of if you decided to make different choices. And that's what separates people. We all live in the same country. We all have 24 hours in a day. Some people rise, other people repeat. And the difference between the two is the choices that we make every single day. So when people say it's hard out here, yes, it is. But it's also hard to stay broke. It's hard to stay stuck, and it's hard to live paycheck to paycheck. You just have to decide which hard you're willing to live with. The one that keeps you dependent or the one that teaches you discipline. Because at the end of the day, if the system fails tomorrow, your survival won't come from the economy. It'll come from your decisions and your faith. Before I close this out, if this message hit home for you, if it made you think, reflect, or even get a little uncomfortable, that means it's done its job. So go ahead and like this live, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear some truth without all the sugarcoating. Because over here on the Faceless Helpmeet, we don't just talk about problems, we expose them, we learn from them, and we grow from them. I'll see you guys on the next one. Stay grounded, stay wise, stay safe, and remember, God's your source, not the system.